Why, hello there, beautiful listeners, and welcome back to Engineering Chaos, a podcast where usually my co-host and I will talk about life as female engineers, give advice to those coming up behind us, and talk about corporate America as it continues to screw us all. However, today is a little different. Today, and probably for the next couple weeks, 2, maybe 3 weeks, I don't know. I haven't quite confirmed with her, and I'm gonna wait till after today to confirm that with her. My co-host is gone, and I get to cause all sorts of chaos by myself. I do plan on doing probably another Am I the Asshole episode in the future, but honestly, I think I'm just gonna go with the chaos and see what happens. Which is very my style on this podcast. So if you don't like listening to me, I'm sorry. You've got a couple weeks of just me. I'm not in cosplay this week because I am currently recording this the day before it releases. Yay, procrastination. But I did do a cosplay this week. I am keeping to my character a week. I did Fizzarelli, but things are changing around these parts. So some of the chaos I am causing is the podcast will be moving to its own YouTube channel. I am going to separate all of my streams of content, partially because I'm worried about losing TikTok, but also just because I want to have a little competition. So if you are purely a podcast listener and don't follow me on any of my other social medias, go show the podcast some love and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Engineering Chaos Pod. We'll have the same handles for everything now, and it's not just on my YouTube. So that the podcast has its own stream. My fitness and my gaming stuff has its own stream, and my cosplay stuff will now have its own stream too. So I'm creating a little competition amongst my different channels just for fun. I'm not really tracking it for any major reason, but I'm trying to post for the next 30 days on all 3 of those platforms on all of our social medias and create a little chaos for my co-host when she comes back. So please, if you enjoy our content, go out and show us some love so we can have a much bigger platform when she gets back. Anyways, I don't really have much to update you guys on. I am just living my life. I got a 3D printer. I was showing that off on the Instagram the other day. My husband and I had our anniversary recently, and he bought, which is so exciting. I think I'm gonna print horns. It's gonna be the first thing I print. He's printed a couple things already and bought some filament for us this weekend. So I think I'm gonna print horns. It's for my next cosplay. We'll see how that goes. That could be a total disaster. Let's be real here. But I think I'm just gonna talk about all things nerd and how that responds and reacts. That's not the right word, but I don't really care. But how that all goes with my engineering life. So this podcast episode is just nerd talk. Because step number 1, cosplay. There are a lot of things outside of what you would think is your traditional path. When you go to engineering school, right, everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to go work as a software engineer for X, Y, and Z company. I'm going to go work as a mechanical engineer for X, Y, Z company. But there's a lot of spaces that if you're not feeling that corporate life, which I didn't realize until about now in my life, that I don't feel it. That you can use your engineering skills to build a small business without having to be like a contractor, right? In my opinion, using the same skills I would use at the big corporate company just as a contractor, the only thing that really does is A, get you more money, and B, has less stability. Because then you are it's a catch-22 with contracting, right? You are in charge of going and getting all your contracts, but then you're not owned by the company, so you don't have the same stability when it comes to benefits and things like that. So if you're doing the same job, is it really worth it? To me, no. But that is always an option when you come out of school. It'll be a lot harder, though, if you're like fresh out of school and never spent time in the corporate world to go be a company. So, that being said, though, there are a lot of spaces outside of the traditional world that you can use your engineering skills. one of which is cosplay. A lot of us cosplayers, myself included, because yes, I am an engineer, but there are certain pieces of engineering I'm not so great at. So, to some extent, I might go buy something from an engineer who built it for me on Etsy. But I am a unique case. Most cosplayers aren't engineers. There are a few of us, but most of us aren't. So things like mechanical tails or moving ears, or I've seen really big cosplay builds of big characters like Groot or the animatronics in Five Nights at Freddy's. That is a space that cosplayers who buy instead of build would easily come frolicking to. So say you want to use your artsy skills and your engineering skills in the same place. Maybe consider looking at an Etsy shop or a small business website, however you want to do it, because there are different options available when it comes to selling product. You can choose to fulfill yourself. You can use Etsy, you can use a website, whatever it is. But if you have unique skills in the engineering world that you can create something like that, I saw someone on TikTok selling these light up tails, and their pre-orders are selling the hell out. So there is a area of cosplay specifically for engineers where they could make a ton of money. With every new fandom that comes out, there's something. There's some character that is impossible to build with just makeup and foam. And that's where the engineers come in. I eventually want to build a coded out project. I might need some help from my co-host to build the mechanical aspects of things because I am not mechanically inclined, and I will admit that. So, it's an interesting space to get into when it comes to cosplay. As an engineer, we all need a creative outlet, and if that's something that interests you, it might also turn into a way to make extra money, or a way to make all of your money if you don't want to live the corporate life anymore. Another one I personally would love to get into, but I never got deep enough into it before I started my career, is video game design and development and modifying. The non-paid version is modifying. A lot of people in the VR world will do things like create their own Beat Saber. That's something I've been looking into recently. I've been looking at creating my own maps for songs that I like to play. And some people will build their own maps in games like Call of Duty, if they have a version that they can modify. Textures and different profiles and things for games like Skyrim or Minecraft. That's a skill set that you can build on your own, outside of school, during school, without school. If you're wanting to go into engineering without ever having to spend the thousands upon thousands of dollars it is to get a bachelor's degree in engineering, you can build that skill set and become useful to a lot of different places and people. It's not traditional engineering in any way, shape, or form, but it's needed in, I think, today's day and age. Video games and worlds like AR and VR type technology are getting more and more important, and the earlier you get into it, the easier it is going to be to adapt and fill those roles that people might not be in it. So, if I was going to get into anywhere from a stability perspective that's not the general commercial engineering jobs that you would think of, it would be video game. One of the roles that I've been looking at even is, and as much as I hate them as a social media company, they bought tech that I'm interested in, is looking at the AR VR stuff that Meta's working on. The Metaverse. Yes, they have competitors, but at the moment, other than maybe Apple Vision, which is still priced too high in comparison to the regular consumer, the Oculus is one of the best headsets out there right now. And the technology, the upgrades they're constantly providing, and honestly, as someone who's recently had to deal with their customer service, customer service isn't bad either. When it comes to the Oculus, I can't say the same for the social media side of the house when it comes to Meta. But the VR side of the house, I had an issue with my charge port where it shorted, and they replaced my Oculus 2. So that is a world that is really interesting. Getting into developing, and Meta lets you do it. You can have a developer account. You can develop and do beta testing and all sorts of interesting things with your commercially available hardware. Similar to app design for phones. You can make money engineering different applications, different games that would be solely on you and not working for a big corporate company. I mean, obviously you can do it with a big corporate company too, but with the power of apps like TikTok and other wide reach capability, Reels, YouTube Shorts, whatever your preferred version, if you get into the short form video game and even long form, like this one is, you can easily promote yourself and get your applications and things like that without spending a ton of money on ads. So my world is just a giant nerd fest. I use my engineering skills in just about all of my hobbies, but I don't like being an engineer. And I think that's why I've come to this conclusion that working for myself isn't about not being an engineer anymore. It's about utilizing my skills in ways that I actually enjoy them. And being able to do the things that I enjoy without having to deal with things like corporate politics. The corporate world has destroyed my love for being an engineer. It has destroyed my interest in emerging technology. And I don't want that to happen to the people coming up behind us. Find a piece of it. Engineering is such a wide variety of topics, of job titles. You've got to find what works for you and what interests you. And if you've listened to this podcast long enough, you'll know that my co-host and I sit on two opposite ends of this. She's doing a master's degree where her classes are integral in things that we do on a day-to-day. They're almost parallel to each other right now. Whereas if I were to do my master's degree, it would have nothing to do with what I do at work. And that's not because I hate being an engineer and I hate the tools and skill sets I have. It's because what I do is not interesting. If I could use my engineering skills to build ears or a FNAF animatronic suit, that's interesting to me. And that's kind of the nerd talk. That's the advice part of this episode, I guess. Because honestly, when it comes to life, I could go on for days about things like Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss and Halloween Horror Nights. But I needed to find a way that I could utilize those special interests to make me money. And that's kind of where this podcast came to be. And that's where things like my cosplay TikTok now. Will I ever make it big as a content creator? Who knows? But at least I'm trying. Because in this crazy, insane world where all of the chaos is constantly coming down around us, the best we can do right now is try to find what makes us as human beings happy. And who the fuck cares if what you got your degree in is not what makes you happy? Who the hell let me make decisions at 16? Like, let's be real here. Who the hell let me make life-altering decisions at 16? I decided my engineering path at 16. I am now in my 20s and to some extent regretting that decision and limited on how I can change that path. I understand those out there that feel like it might be too late to change that path. But it's not. And we all need to fight back. If we're not meant for being corporate drones, screw those people that say go get a real job. Having a real job fucking sucks. Being a content creator is hard. It is not easy, fluffy, let's ban TikTok because they're all lazy ass people. It's not that. You have to constantly put yourself out there and be ready to be ridiculed. Whereas at my corporate job, that only happens if human resources isn't doing their job, which I will give. Happens more often than not. People do get into situations where their coworkers are absolute total assholes. And that's fine, but don't hate on the content creators who want a better life for themselves than sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 every day, destroying their body and mind when they can create something. There are plenty of major content creators out there that are not my cup of tea. That doesn't mean they didn't work hard to get their platform. Sometimes it happened overnight. But they still have to maintain that platform to continue to get these big sponsorships and things that keep them afloat. So the next time you think about hating on a content creator for not having a real job, think about that. It is a real job. It is a full-time, sometimes plus, job to be a content creator. And yeah, there are some weeks where if I was a full-time content creator, I would probably log 4 hours of work. But then there are some that I would log 80. Yes, the logistics of that are literally impossible, but that's not the point. We are in a society that is crumbling around us. And technology might be the answer, but technology also might destroy us. And so we need to find the things that make us happy. And as adults, who defines what the fuck an adult is? And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is look, if for those watching on YouTube, I have what most people would consider extremely quote-unquote childish things behind me. I have a lot of plushies. I just bought a new plushie at Disney. I was just at Disney. I have all of my Disney ears of many different characters, and I have a lot of Funko Pops. And a giant plushie of Baymax from Big Hero 6 as a s'more. So, being an adult doesn't... I grew up. I pay my bills. I own a house. I have pets. I'm married. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy the things that are supposedly made for kids. Cosplaying has gotten a lot of, like, you should grow out of that kind of mentality on the internet. Who cares? Why are you... If someone wants to paint themselves green and dress up as their favorite character, who the fuck cares? We're all miserable because we are slaves to fucking capitalism. So let us have a little bit of fucking fun. And I didn't really mean for this to get into like a political-ish rant. And I don't know, this is just random bullshit from me at this point. It's nerd hour. I will tell you the details of every algorithm I have ever had to deal with. TikTok, Instagram. I get so deeply into those because I'm an engineer and I understand the details of how they work. That doesn't mean I can force myself to go viral. Partially because I suck at being consistent. I just do. Because I don't have time. Because corporate America is drowning us all, and they take away all of the fun. I am slowly finding a routine that works for me, and by routine I mean just letting my mind drift in and out of the stages it needs to be in. And that's something corporate America doesn't allow you to do. And I would love to sugarcoat it for all of these bright-eyed and bushy-tailed engineering students coming into the workforce in the next couple years. But I would run. I would start a business now while you're in college. I would honest to God, I would start posting on social media and try to go viral and start a small business that way. Because literally anything is better than being a corporate drone. And yes, I am very privileged to have a job in today's day and age. I am, and I'm not going to say I'm not. I am privileged to be an engineer. I worked hard, but it is a privilege to be able to do what I did, where I worked hard, I got my degree, I don't have student loan debt. It is a privilege, and I will acknowledge that. That doesn't negate the fact that the corporate structure is a nightmare. I have more fun with things like cosplay and going to Disney and fitness and literally just video game design, video game modifying, 3D printing random ass shit. That is not corporate. And this is becoming more of a State of the Union podcast episode because we've talked a lot about a lot of different topics on this podcast. And we're coming into what I am going to call the new era. We've been doing this for 25? This might be 23 and 24, so almost 25 episodes. And while that might not seem like a lot, I read a statistic once that most podcasts drop out after 8 episodes. The biggest growth tactic for podcasts is to just keep going. And our statistics are all over the place, and I try not to look at them, and hope that we continue to grow if we continue to post and provide valuable content. And I wish I could tell engineers in the world coming up behind us that it's the best damn thing on the planet. But it's not. Will you enjoy yourself at times? Yes. But honestly, right now, somehow, even though there seems to be a hiring issue, a lot of places are understaffed to hell. And I think the real answer is we're not understaffed. We're under-talented. And a lot of places don't want to advance with the times either. Or if they do, it takes a literal century to advance. And that kind of defeats the purpose of advance. I wish I could truly explain all of the random things. But the State of the Union is, if you can find a way out where you can work for yourself, I'd fucking do it, dude. If you're in school right now and listening to this as an engineering student, start finding a way that you can support yourself and utilize your skills. So I'm not saying throw away your degrees, especially if you spent a lot of money on them. But there are so many other ways to sustain yourself than being a corporate slave. And this might sound like a downer of an episode, but I promise I have a point here. Just as I started out talking about how there's so many other random places that you can find different things that I've found over the years, right? I became a personal trainer amongst the COVID shutdowns because I needed an outlet that kept me sane. Because being a corporate drone, you're not meant to sit at a desk for 10 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. Because realistically speaking, even if you're not at the desk for 10 hours, you're in a car or sitting, and that just destroys not only your physical body, but your mental health as well. So, in the interest of learning things, because I got bored at work and I wasn't learning things anymore, I became a personal trainer. And then I started getting more certifications. I signed up to get a nutrition certification and a mental health certification. Not that level. I obviously can't help you like a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but there are mental aspects and mindset aspects to training clients. So I went to get certifications in that, and gut health, and hormones, and I for the first time since I came out of college, I found an interest to go in and dig in and start learning everything I possibly could. And I'm still doing that. I still enjoy it. I have rough patches when it comes to creating content and building that business because consistency is my weakness. And I will fully admit that. Being consistent with something is nearly impossible unless I am being forced to be responsible to someone else. And it's not because I can't do it on my own. It's just because I have 500 other things going on that when building a business, as much as I want to get out of corporate America, building that business, which is why I said start it in school. Start building that platform early so that, yeah, you may have to work a couple years to get all of the money background that you need. But when you do get out, you have a fully functioning business and you're not worried. Will this be sustainable? And you're not trying to make that call of when do I leave and when do I not? That's part of being an entrepreneur, but also just learning to be self-sustainable. And it took me a really long time to learn that in even the corporate environment. So I did that. And now we started this podcast. And I love talking about all of the different issues in engineering, talking about new things like AR and VR and AI and how it can destroy us all and turn into iRobot. I binged the shit out of the Ready Player One books. Ready Player One and Ready Player Two. I could not put those books down because of how interesting that concept is to me. That world of engineering is interesting. And that's where a lot of students, I don't think, get the time in school to find their love. I didn't have time to read. I didn't have time until my senior year to start looking back into video games again. And that was also when I discovered electronic design, which is where the cosplay comes in. I'm not good mechanically, which is why things like wigs, which I also have behind me, are not my specialty. Because if I'm things like you guys recently have seen the cherry bomb wig, that's a little bit engineered. There's a lot of weight distribution on that one that if it had been done just the right or wrong way, same thing with the horns. I was being kind of dumb when it came to the magnets. I thought, oh, they won't spin, they're tiny, and they started spinning. So there's a lot of just mechanically inclined things that I'm not good at. And I will admit that. Could I do them in school? Yeah, I haven't touched them in 7-ish years though. So finding the ways to use my engineering skills in things that are interesting and nerdy, like cosplay. Because I'm working, like I said, one of the first things that I'm going to 3D print. I'm not building the file myself. I will go through the saga eventually with you guys on building files. Probably do like a stream or something. Come build my cosplay with me or something. If I can do it on my Mac. But that's not meant to be a plug, but it's just something that I can do extra on stream when it comes to cosplay content. I lost my train of thought. Go figure. I'm really good at doing that. This is really difficult to do without my other half. These episodes have been like 2 hours long and I'm struggling to get past the hour point by myself. But I guess it'll be a little bit of a refresher for you guys to have a little bit of a shorter episode the next couple weeks. But my point being is find the things you enjoy. Right? Engineering is a long road in school, and not utilizing your talents and skills to get through school and help teach yourself was the biggest downfall I ever had. Learning to be a personal trainer is what finally made some concepts in physics that I never really fully grasped. I kind of bullshitted my way through school. Yeah. Learning as a personal trainer made some of my very hard classes in school make sense. And no one really helped me through that. It was how to turn very dull and not interesting concepts like physics into something worth learning with practical application. I never had professors teach it practically. It was all theoretical nonsense that seemed like black magic. But when you start showing it practically in a lab or the concept that I understand things suddenly made sense. And I think you have to do that with your corporate life as well. You have to find the things. If you're going to survive actually working in the corporate world the rest of your life, which again, I don't recommend. Just plain point blank, I'm sorry if corporate is your only life choice, because I've been to a couple different companies now and they're all the same. The grass is not greener. Your best option in the corporate world is going to be hopping companies, hopping jobs. Don't be loyal to anybody, because at least then you'll make more money. At least then you'll make more money. And yeah, you have to find your area. And I just don't think I've found that yet. Well, that's not true. I have found it. It's in my nerd fandoms. It's in video games, and it's in AR, VR, and cosplay, and that's where I'm planning on using my engineering skills in the future. It's in content creation. Because I do all of the editing for this podcast, and that stuff is interesting. It's not really engineering. It can be if I have to fix audio, and I just don't have the software to do that. Well, I'm learning. But these are all, we talked in a previous episode of what type of engineer would I be if I wasn't in systems, and I talked all about audio engineering, and got questioned if engineering was even, or audio engineering was really engineering, and it is. There is no denying the work, especially if you've ever edited anything with audio, a video, a podcast, whatever it is. There's no denying the finesse and engineering skills required to have proper audio setups and edit podcasts and make them sound. There's just no denying the skill level required. And I'm not there yet. I'm constantly fighting this rig. Not because it's bad equipment, but because I'm dumb. And I think that's why these things are interesting to me, is you have to find the challenge. If you don't like being challenged, then yeah, corporate life is probably going to be best for you. If you like just kind of being told what to do and going along for the ride, then corporate life is absolutely fantastic for you. If you like constantly being challenged and you don't want to be a forever student, because that's the other thing, is a lot of people in the engineering realm will go back to school to make their lives more difficult, to be challenged, to get up the ladder, whatever your reasoning are, or reasoning is. I was done. 1 degree and done. I was not willing to go back to get my master's. I'm not to go back and get my master's, because I think it's a pointless waste of time and money. If you don't get challenged from that, finding it in a corporate workplace is just not something that is going to happen. So you have to find it outside. Find it in your routine outside, whether it's the challenge of gaining new PRs in the gym, the challenge of winning, I don't know, tournaments with co-ed sports, adult sports. I know that's something my mom did when I was growing up. She played a lot of adult co-ed sports, and they would play games every week and had tournaments at the end of the season or whatever it was. If that's your thing, find the challenge in that. A lot of engineers make their whole life being an engineer, and to some extent, this is part of my personality now. I am an engineer, but I am not a corporate drone. I want to use the skills that I learned in electronics in school, that I've learned since being in the corporate world, to build an environment for those of us that don't fit the corporate mold. I want to build something out of this. Whether it's just a community of crazy people or a whole empire that gives those of us that don't fit the corporate life in any way, shape, or form a place to be who we are, but still utilize our engineering skills. And I don't know. I don't know where this is really going. I think this is kind of just random ramblings from me at this point. I love to give advice, whether it be asked for or not. I think that's the reason these podcast episodes can go over 2 to 3 hours sometimes. Is I could talk for days about the problems in the world and how we fix them and shout into the void, but no one's gonna listen. And I love digging into all these random topics like AR and VR and AI and talking about stupid bullshit like performance reviews and helping explain corporate to people. Because honestly, when I started as a little tiny 20-year-old in this industry, corporate ate me alive. It still, to this day, as a senior engineer, eats me alive. I don't understand the game, and I don't understand the politics, and I struggle every damn fucking day being a person that the higher-ups and the powers that be would want to put in a leadership position, even though technically speaking, I am their best bet. I don't have the personality. And honestly, I probably never will. And if you're like that, good fucking luck. I wish you good luck, sir. If you have any sort of spice, and I don't mean the neurospicy, I literally just mean if you were a female with a personality that is not meek and mild and well-mannered, good luck in this corporate world. And that might sound like I am speaking the ways of old and generalizing female experience, and it is generalization because it's based off of my experience, but it's also based off of several other females I've talked to in this corporate world. We are in a male-dominated industry, and a lot of the males don't want to fucking change. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And that's kind of where you'll get the tagline abrasive. And we've talked a lot about me getting that tagline in this podcast. Having an opinion that is not that of the group hive mind is frowned upon. And that's unfortunate. But that's the way it goes. So, when it comes to just, I don't even know, dude. This is just the random ramblings because honestly, I'm taking all of our previous episodes and wrapping it up into one big middle finger for corporate America. I am the one who started the as corporate America continues to screw us all piece of this podcast, and I will stand by that. Your companies do not care about you. I personally believe, while I don't want to incite any sort of violence, I personally believe the working force should revolt and stand up to these giant conglomerations that are trying to take us down. What benefit do we have to be loyal anymore? There's not one. So why should we be? What benefit do we have working for these big companies anymore? Some may say insurance, but what big company nowadays has good fucking insurance? Because none of them that I've worked for have. I don't know about y'all, but I obviously haven't worked for every company known to man. But these companies are giving us less and less incentives to work for a big company. So why wouldn't we just find a way on our own? Why wouldn't we? Not all of us are cut out for it, sure. There's always going to be people who would rather work the meek and mild follower life. But there's more of us that want to be the top dog, and that's why you get so competitive in these big corporate. But the thing is when you're in a corporation, you're never going to be the top dog unless you own the company. So when it comes to just life advice, like I said, if you're in school now, and I think a lot of parents have taken this route, but they may not have done it the right way, right? Going back to the social media conversation we've had a couple times on this podcast, a lot of people are saying how social media is really going to be the only way to build a business and survive. So they're starting accounts for their kids when they're infants, so that they have a platform to hand over when their kids are 18 or whatever age to hand over the platform. While I can see the mindset, I absolutely can. I think building something for your kids to hand over to them that they can easily take over, but some small business, some people are saying social media content creation is that small business. Sure, get ads, build a platform, whatever it is. That social engineering is right on track. We are heading towards small business empowerment with things like Shop Small and all of these boycotts. And I don't know, this has nothing to do with engineering, but it does have everything to do with working for these big ass fucking companies. So if you're an engineer, find ways to do it for yourself. Similar to how parents have found platforms for their kids. I may not agree with the way they've done it, because I don't think kids should be on social media. Young kids. I think they should be able to consent to what goes up on the internet. Because I was always told as a kid, in all of these technological advancements, I've never been in a family that was behind the curve. Thankfully. I think that's why I am the way that I am now. But I was always told the internet is permanent. Be aware of what you are posting. And if your parents are posting a bunch of shit for you before you can even talk, then, well, that could be a problem for you in the future. Say maybe you want to take a more traditional route, and now your parents have plastered everything about you out on the internet, and you can't get the approvals that you want to get for the job you want to have. Some areas of the engineering world are not super fond of being public figures. So that limits your job options if you wanted to become something not a public figure once you were one. So, to that extent, right, you could do your marketing faceless. You don't have to be a public figure. But I would suggest that if you were in the early years of your career, or in school, even, starting to build a platform related to what you want to do. Starting to maybe do some engineering projects on the side. Get your hands on some stuff that's interesting to you. Whether it be building tails, like it is for me, building engineered cosplays that are a little bit more complicated than just wigs and makeup. Or it could also be doing something like automated watering systems. It's been a conversation in my family since I started engineering school. How do I use a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino to connect up to my sprinkler system or a water feature that will go time it and then look at water saturation with sensors and things like that, so that we know when to run the system and when not to, based on water conservation. That's a project an engineering student probably could build and get paid well for it, because people don't understand how to do it. There are a whole bunch of different projects out there that you could do consulting type work. Or maybe you want to get into roller coaster design, but you picked a school in a state that has no roller coasters, aka no theme park transfer. Similar to being loyal to a company, if you find maybe 2 years into your degree that another school has more of what you want, don't be afraid to transfer. If it's possible. Obviously, there's logistics and money and everything else involved. But if you have the capability to transfer to a school that has more of what you want to do available to you, say you started small and you want to go bigger, transfer and finish it at a bigger school. Or vice versa, you started big and it's very overwhelming and you want to go small. Start looking at those small schools. Transfer. Don't be afraid to hop just because someone told you you had to keep with the same decision you made as a young human being. Engineering is a brutal career choice from a competitive stance, from a time work-life balance stance, from a job availability stance even nowadays. I've mentioned in the past how I think we are starting to close our doors. It's not as easy to find engineering positions anymore. We are becoming an oversaturated market because people are thinking, oh, if I can make it through school, I can make a lot of money. The market is changing. As engineers, we have to be aware of that. And some people may disagree with me that the market's not changing, but I think it is. I think we are starting to close our doors. It is getting harder and harder to fill roles with competent people, but also to come in from the outside. If you are not already involved with someone on the inside, you may not be able to get on the inside of some of these big companies until you find someone on the inside to put in a referral for you. So, why risk not being able to get in when you could get ahead of it and start working on small little projects as an SE creator? Creating, look at 3D printing, right? So many people have printers, but don't have the capability to build the files themselves because they're not engineers. Really, most of the time, not 100% of the time, but a large majority of the time, engineers are the only people who've worked with the software to build the files for 3D printers. Is it learnable on your own? Yes. But engineers have it readily accessible to themselves, usually. So, why not start building something? Start selling your files for designs for 3D printers. Start selling patterns for things you engineer. Or instructables, right? There's plenty of people selling PDF instructions and downloadables on Etsy. $5 here and there, but a ton of people will find it on a website like Etsy. Start building a platform on something like TikTok or a podcast of your own. Start early and you might never have to enter the corporate workforce. You might not have to ever compete and fight. You're going to compete as an entrepreneur. You're competing. It is not an easy market, but it gives you more control. And that is a piece of advice I wish someone had given me. I had a bad example of an entrepreneur in my life growing up, and that basically turned my entire family against the idea of being an entrepreneur without a background of a corporate job. The safety net, for lack of a better way of putting it. And now there's myself, who's running a million miles a minute with a bunch of different types of businesses that I want to start, and a bunch of different ideas, and just struggling where to get my feet in the door. And my cousin is starting has a whole bunch of different ideas himself, one of which may involve me engineering something or working with a team of engineers to kind of get it off the ground if we ever got funding to do. That's the type of stuff that I want to use my skills for. And yes, entrepreneurship is not for everybody, and I'm not going to say it is. But if you already struggle being in traditional environments, like a school environment, or, regular work environment, maybe you're still in school, but you work part-time, and that's a struggle for you. The corporate world, once you get out of school, is not going to be any better. And if you're already in the corporate world and you are struggling, thinking, oh, it'll get better when I get closer to the top, it doesn't. The higher up I've gotten, the worse it's got. And I was that bright-eyed junior engineer that thought, oh, once I get to control things, it'll make it better. It doesn't. There are so many other opportunities, and I don't think a lot of engineers realize it, because I've had a similar conversation with the co-host of this podcast, that there's nothing she can do outside of engineering to make money. What she doesn't realize is that she can use engineering to make that money without having to be a corporate job. Put her head in the right game. You could get there. Obviously, if you hate your job and you want to do something else entirely, change. It's never too late. But if you like the challenge of being an engineer, you like some of the concepts that come with being in engineering, and you have skills in building, or you have skills in software, there are always little niche markets that need your help because there aren't enough engineers in that to be able to do it themselves. Cosplay is one of those unique situations. A lot of cosplayers are buyers, not builders. Or if they're builders, they can't build the initial steps. They can build it if you give them the instructions on how, but you have to give them the instructions on how. They have the printer, but they don't have the capability to make the files. That kind of stuff. The tails, programmable tails. You have to give them the app and the tail, but they'll gladly buy it while they build the rest. I'm sure there's 500 other examples, but cosplay is on my mind. So that's the community I'm thinking of that could use engineers that will sell them unique things. And I'm sure like I mentioned, the irrigation system project. There are so many different projects, and I'm sure even through schools you could get funding for some of these things if you tried hard enough. And then you're already working on building a business before you even come out of school. And you might need help from professors or grad students or something like that, but it's okay to ask for help. If it goes anywhere, then maybe you cut them in, depending on how much help they got. So, corporate drone life is not your only option as an engineer. And I think that's kind of the whole theme of this. Yes, it went off on many random tangents and many random, slightly political rants, but we are in a sink or swim environment. And realistically, my co-host has said it a couple times, you are not going to swim in a corporate environment unless you're willing to step on people. And she's not exactly wrong. Lord help me if she listens to this while she's out. She's not wrong. You do have to step on people to get to the top. But the question is, who are you willing to step on? Do you want to step on the coworkers who are working as hard as you? Or do you want to step on your competition because you're better? I'd rather step on my competition because I don't consider my coworkers competition. My coworkers are just that. They're coworkers. They work just as hard and deal with the same bullshit I do. So why am I going to step on them to get above them? They put in just as much time as I did. I mean, if it's the ones that didn't put in the same time, well, that's their own damn fault and they deserve it. That's when the middle finger starts to come out. But again, my kind of thought process on that is why corporate environment will never be good for me. And along this journey of learning more about myself in a corporate environment, I've learned that the higher I have to mask, the less likely I am to be successful. And for those of you who have to mask on a daily basis in the workplace, it is destroying your progress. If you didn't already know that, you do now. Masking and forcing yourself to be someone you're not, and constantly having to bite your tongue and never be the high-level powerhouse that you truly are, and making yourself smaller because you don't want to hurt somebody else's feelings, or you don't want to be perceived as rude, or just perceived at all in some cases. It is hurting your progress all around. If you're too scared to start that TikTok account because you desperately want to get out, but you don't want to put yourself out there. It's no different than dating. You're never going to be able to get out, and you're never going to be able to truly flourish if you don't just start. It's the same when I started back in cosplay. Y'all have seen some of these cosplays have been messy as shit. I try to hide it in the TikToks, man. The cherry bomb jacket was a hot mess. But I was sewing and I was constructing, and I haven't sewn in 15 years, and I decided to try and do a suit jacket. And honestly, when I used to sew, I don't think I really ever did garment. Like, that was a new, like, sleeves? Sleeves? No. You just have to start. And yes, it's true when you get into your corporate job for the first time as well, but it is more accurate when it comes to truly being yourself when you are a high-masking individual. It is going to take time to completely unravel that mask. And in a corporate environment, you're never going to be able to fully unravel that task. Smaller companies, startups, you might be able to get there, but those opportunities are few and far between. You get lucky enough to get into a startup, do everything you can to be integrated into that startup getting off the floor. Because that's your lifeline to not having to be a corporate job. But all in all, that is where the State of the Union comes when it comes to being an engineering student. Being a student and then entering the corporate world. The corporate world sucks right now. It does. I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you. I'm not going to lie to you. You may be loving it. You may think, oh, well, I did an internship at this big company and it was great. You got the shiny, happy people. You got the, we won't tell you our drama, we'll smile in your face and give you all the cool projects because we want you to come back and be an intern for us again. You didn't get the real experience, unfortunately. I wish more companies would stop putting the shiny, happy people face on for their interns so they could truly see what goes on. But that's never going to happen. Honestly, the shine happens a lot with junior engineers in their first year, too. People will treat them like they walk on water. And then suddenly, that doesn't happen anymore. And you're no longer allowed to have 80 hours of training because you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and want to learn everything. You're no longer allowed to just get your feet wet and all these different things. You're put in a corner and told to just do your job and not ask questions. And if you're like me and that task is nearly impossible, you will slowly start drowning and you'll never be able to come up for air until you get out. And that sounds depressing, and that sounds like the worst thing in the world, and like I am hyperboleing my way through this, which to some extent I am. But for the most part, I am not. That is my true opinion. The corporate world right now. And I joke around a lot with my co-host, and say some of these things are hyperbole. Like, some of them are. Some of them I go extreme, and some of them are just extremist me saying a lot of bullshit to create entertainment. But this episode isn't really about entertainment. It's about being legit and real with y'all that coming into this world right now is going to fucking suck. If you're already in it and you're miserable, it's not getting any better. If you're in it and you love it, this isn't for you. But if you're in it and you're miserable, it doesn't get any better from here. If you're in it and you're surviving, you'll soon be drowning. Things are moving, and they're moving in a good direction, but they're also moving in a direction of less support and more demands. And to some extent, I guess that's just the result of living in a capitalistic society where no one gives a fuck. We've fucked ourselves, for lack of a better way of putting it. But having the grass is always greener mentality, the only thing that's greener when you just jump around from job to job hoping the next place is going to be better is the literal green. That helps you gain more money, and I'm not going to deny that fact. Jumping does help. Loyalty doesn't pay anymore. But the job itself will eventually lose its shine, and you're going to be in the same place you were a year ago. Or however long it takes to lose the shine. For me, it's about a year. So I'm going to keep it short today because this one is not a lighthearted episode by any means. And that's why I'll come back next week with some Am I the Asshole fun. talk all about asshole engineers and give my opinion and hopefully have a little bit of a longer episode. But I wanted to kind of just sit down and talk about City and talk about things that, yes, they are my special interest, but it's also a very real thing going on in the engineering industry right now. Engineers, in my opinion, are better off being contractors and project for hire type engineers than they are working for a corporate environment, because corporate environment stifles your ability to engineer. It stifles your ability to be creative and come up with new solutions and create things that will help advance all of this technology and advance your life, the people around you's life, and just advance life as a whole. Being a corporate drone will stifle everything you thought you loved about engineering, for the most part. And that's why I think it's better if the students and the young ones, and maybe even those in the senior environments that aren't too happy with their jobs, start to look at ways to build a project for hire business and utilize their engineering skills that they paid for, but to build something better for themselves rather than somebody else. That's just my 2 cents. And none of this really should be surprising to those who have been listening to this podcast for a while. I very much so am a pessimist when it comes to corporate America. I do have a lot of, or I guess lack of faith in the powers that be in these big companies to treat their employees well, to treat their employees like anything other than ants for the ants. Our corporate overlords are the grasshoppers, and we are the ants, and we need to revolt. And in my opinion, silently revolting is everybody creating their own businesses that potentially could rival some of these big boys, but don't have the same bullshit. Because I can't change a company's culture by myself, but I can create my own culture in my own company. So, I stand. Let me know if you have any, drop some thoughts in the comments. What do you think? Do you think it's changing for the better right now in the engineering industry? Do you think it's, are you happy with the way corporate America exists right now? Am I completely insane? Am I just a pessimist that is just completely unhappy with my life and I need to change everything? I don't know. Not everything. It's really just work. But that is it for this week, ladies and squirms. I'm gonna come back with the Am I the Asshole, so I'm not gonna spin the wheel this week. But as always, if you enjoy our content, please head over to TikTok and Instagram and follow us at Engineering Chaos Pod. If you need any help and fitness help, you can go and find me out on everything at It's Coach KC. If you already followed It's Coach KC for the YouTube channel, please head on over to our new YouTube channel, Engineering Chaos Pod, and follow us there. And if you're interested in some of the cosplay content, I probably won't do long form for a while, but I am doing short form on YouTube. Casey Chaos. 0321 Casey Chaos something. You'll find me. I usually have all of that linked in the show notes. So have fun and go forth and conquer, my lovely Chaos Gremlins. Good for this week.